Hi everyone, you are Reddit expose there, enjoy watching.
I've been living in Seattle for 6 years now, and I measure time not by clocks, but by ads in the link. Next stop, Capitol Hill. On weekends, I take an Orca cart, coffee, a paper cup, and go to watch the city pretend that rain is not the weather, but part of the interface. I met Emma at a yard sale in Ballard. I came to get a used drill. She was selling a set of pots, because I cook in one pen anyway. I was haggling for the drill, and she smiled and said, "If you take the pots, I'll give you the drill cheaper." In the end, I dragged everything away into trips and drove with her to QFC for groceries to wash the deal. A month later, we walked around Green Lake in a circle, as if we were rehearsing a life together. The same route, but the conversations are always different. Emma worked as a nurse at Harborview, working night shifts every other day. I am a product designer at a logistics startup in SLU. We have eternal rallies and yesterday on the prod. Our schedules never matched, but for a while we even liked it. She would come in at 7 in the morning, I would put coffee on, listen to her stories about patients, then she would fall asleep to my whispering about features. The cat was born in the 3rd month, a striped type named Taco, who greeted both night and dawn with equal enthusiasm. We shot a 1-bedroom apartment on Capitol Hill, creaking floors, batteries that are either silent or hissing. A view of a neighbor who always had sneakers drying in the window. On Saturdays, we went to the farmer's market in Ballard in the bread queue. She set the alarm, "Don't forget to sleep in the afternoon." I set the alarm, "Don't forget to turn off Slack." We held on to habits like handrails. The problem started without drama. She was constantly sleep deprived, and even on weekends, her body asked for silence at 4 in the morning. More and more often, I found myself getting angry at the SOS, need and edit messages, even though I had once written them to others. In the evening, we both wanted a simple conversation and foo, but it turned out to be silence and "let's do it tomorrow." In January, we quarreled over the thermostat. It was freezing. I considered 72 degrees a waste. In February, because I ordered delivery again, although there is in the refrigerator. Both were right in their own way and equally tired. In the spring, Emma received a letter. She was accepted into the nurse practitioner program in Portland. 2 years. Some of the classes are online, but you need to move. She said this in the kitchen, leaning on the refrigerator with a support your local dump run magnet, and asked, "Can we stretch the distance?" I said, "Let's try it," but everything was already moving inside. The first summer, we went to each other's Boltbus and Alo, Facetime instead of movies, shared lists in Notion instead of "let's go to IKEA." Taco got used to my weekend moves and stopped presenting the suitcase. In the fall, it became clear that we live like neighbors with a calendar. Our later has replaced the now. The conversation that decided everything did not happen at night or in the rain, but at noon in Victrola. She came in after a pharmacology class with her hair in a bun, shadows under her eyes, and a folder with a charting greater than charming sticker in her hand. I brought her oatmeal and added sugar twice. I remembered. She said it without drama. "I don't have time to live 2 lives at the same time. With you and there. And you don't have to wait." I reply. "And you don't have to drag me." We didn't cry. We didn't make a scene. We sat down at home, opened the Google share sheet, and wrote down the coffee grinder is for her, the table is for me, and the taco stays with me because I spend less time at night. The magnets were put in an envelope. Put the keys in the bowl by the door. For the first few weeks, I moved the furniture an inch here, an inch here, as if I could rearrange something inside that couldn't be rearranged. I took off her recipe stickers and left one. Pasta water, salted like to see. I signed up for a therapist on a sliding scale in Westtown in Seattle. This is, in fact, as much as you can. You pay as much. Once every 2 weeks, we called things by their proper names that I had been calling unimportant for years. That control is not a concern, that I can handle it sometimes means I'm scared, that silence is not always careful. Meanwhile, the city was living its own life. I joined the tool library on Feeney Ridge, where I can borrow a miter or a stepladder for a week. On Fridays, I took the extra canned food to the community fridge at 12th Ave. I learned not to swear at Link when trains run less frequently for technical reasons. I made a list of 3 things I do on a bad day. Brew rosehip in a thermocup, walk to the embankment on the internet, and don't open the mail after 8. For months later, we ran into each other at the PCC in Fremont. I'm carrying a basket, she's carrying coffee and a bag of oatmeal bars. New haircut, Same straight back. We stopped at a safe meter. Hello. A couple of minutes about work, about tacos, yes, still sleeping on the keyboard, about the rain, which seems to come out of the socket. She said, "You look calmer." I said, "You too." We hugged briefly, like people who understand the value of distance, and went in different directions. There's no what if. In winter, I moved to the garden floor in Wallingford. More light, fewer memories in the walls. I changed the gasket under the faucet, screwed the door closer to the door I never thought it would bring so much relief, set the timer on the humidifier. I put 3 stickers on the refrigerator. Pour the monster on Tuesday. Do not be a hero. Do not read comments after midnight. Nonsense that saves. On Saturdays, I started going to Finney Farmer's Market for eggs and sizzling apple crumpets. Sometimes I helped my neighbor, Mr. Kim, drive the old Subaru to the mechanic. His hands are shaking, and the discount for neighbors is only in cash, so I dropped it off at the ATM. One day he said, "You're a good neighbor." I wrote it down in notes and reread it a week later, as a reminder of where to direct my efforts. In the spring, Emma sent one message on Instagram. A photo, in a bathrobe with the caption "Past the last module. Thank you for not holding it back then." I replied with congrats and liked it. I had a chance to offer coffee if you're in town, but I didn't use it and didn't feel like I was missing something. It turned out not to be about indifference, but about the right distance. In April, the intercom in our house broke down. The management company suggested wait for the master from 9 to 6. I wrote in a chat at home, "Who has experienced how not to sit all day?" An hour later, we had a shared Google tab, 3 windows, and one neighbor, an electrician, who came at 12:40 and fixed everything. We recorded the contacts on the door and bolted a small shelf for parcels so that couriers would not put them in the rain. It's a small thing, but the house sigh. In the summer, I started riding my bike to work on Cheshire Street because there's still a traffic jam on Slough after lunch. On the corner at Molly Moon's was a box labeled Neighborhood Swap. Books, cables, mugs. I put our old oven timer in there and found a screwdriver with bits that was just missing. It's funny how rarely things are left at home if you give them a chance. One Sunday, my friend and I went to the Mag Peaks. During the break, I went out behind Tim's Cascade and saw him walking up the stairs, wearing a baseball cap, with a man I didn't know. We caught each other's eye, raised our palms hello, okay, and parted. It was calm inside, not because it doesn't matter, but because let it be so. By the end of the year, I realized a simple thing that I used to say in other people's quotes. Memory is not an anchor, but a folder in the closet. In the folder is a magnet. May this be your best day. A receipt from Victrola. A photo of Taco, who for some reason loves my keyboard more than me. The folder closes when necessary and opens when desired. The rest is about how many quarters you have for the dryer and where to buy normal hooks for the hallway. If a conclusion is needed, it is discreet. In America, it's easy to believe that life is a montage. Coffee, jogging, sunset, we did it. But more often, it's like a laundry on the corner. You load what you've sold, add powder, select a mode, and wait. Something is being washed, something needs to be washed at a different temperature, and it's time to give something back. Not a tragedy. Order. Sometimes my friends write to me. We saw Emma in Portland. I was buying coffee after my shift. I'm smiling. I have no complaints about her. We did what we could, and we finished on time. Now I have an apartment where the door closes softly, a neighbor's chat room where people put up windows for the master themselves, and a cat who still talks to the refrigerator at night. On Fridays, I turn off the equipment for half an hour and just sit in silence. I can hear the rain falling somewhere far away and someone repairing the creaking of the stairs from the neighbors. And I think, not as the hero of the story about the only one, but as a man who finally has enough of his own hands, I'm here. And that's enough. In the spring, Seattle switched back to the light rain as an interface background mode. In the mornings, the yard smelled of wet cedar and coffee. In the evenings, the wet fur of the neighborhood dogs and yeast from the bakery on the corner. I found a steady rhythm, an Orca card in my pocket, a bike on the balcony, and half an hour of silence on Friday without screens. Taco, as usual, tried to lie down on the laptop, and not next to it. He has a separate relationship with technology. In April, the PNI Center hosted a Fix-It clinic. I brought Mr. Kim's old toaster in there because he had been frying bread in the oven for a month and cursing in Japanese and English mixed together. I got in line with a woman with a lamp without a diffuser, a guy with a coffee grinder, and a grandfather with a radio whose cassette was chewing on the notes. We twisted screwdrivers, exchanged bits, and laughed at the strange screws that don't happen, but they do. The toaster started on the third attempt. Mr. Kim then brought me a bunch of green onions from his garden in a bucket. Better tip. I didn't argue. The therapist suggested a little more people, a little less apps. I signed up to volunteer for a bike count for urban residents. I was standing at the intersection on 45th Street in the morning, putting sticks in the table, helmet, without, with a child over without, electric bike, non-electric. People were nodding. One guy stopped and asked, "Do you give it to someone later?" "Yes, to those who decide where to draw the green stripe." He left more slowly than he arrived, as if he had gained respect for the stripes. Emma and I hardly corresponded. One day, she threw out a photo. Our old cast iron frying pan was found in the dorm in the shared kitchen. I once took it to Portland, but then I forgot. "Take it away." I reply, "Leave it. Let it be a kitchen fund." In the evening, I realized that this is the adult form of take care of yourself. Do not turn objects into an excuse. Smoke came in the summer. The smell of burnt pine crept into the cracks like water in winter. In the chat at home, every second person asked about filters and masks. I googled the coarse Rosenthal box, bought for Murph filters and a fan at Home Depot, and 2 layers of duct tape. We collected it with our neighbor Mark right in the hallway. Taco inspected it like a foreman. Nose everywhere, tail in duct tape. Half an hour later, the box hummed softly, like an old refrigerator, and the air in the room stopped smelling like a bonfire. Mark took a picture and sent it to the chat. A day later, we already have 5 such boxes on the floors. They brought their own to Mr. Kim. He turned it on, sat for a minute, and said, "It's like a train in Korea, it's humming too, but people are better off." We left an assembly kit by the elevator and a list of stores that hadn't made it yet. A simple plan is sometimes better than any speech. The smoke was followed by a rare heat wave in Seattle. The intercom died again, and the door started slamming harder. I also put a door closer on the common door. 12 screws, 2 watches, and 1 neighbor, an electrician, as a consultant. They wrote thank you in the chat, and no one else jumped from the clap after 10 in the evening. I realized how much I love things that just work. Taco stopped eating one day and lay down in the sun without the usual comments to the refrigerator. I was scared. Time passes differently when someone who usually talks is silent. There's a queue at the clinic on Stoneway. Masks and flyers about chipping. The doctor said it was probably stress and heat, and gave recommendations: water, chilled spiders, quiet and dark. Just in case, I texted Emma. The cat got carried away. That's what they do. She sent a normal, polite veterinarian to Ballard if it gets worse. That was the end of the correspondence, and I noticed, calmly, we know how not to overestimate. In the fall, Mom flew to Seattle for the first time to see how you really are there. I made up a route without tourist pathos. Pike Place early in the morning, when there are no crowds, the ferry to Bainbridge, not for the sake of photos, but for tea on deck, a short circle around Green Lake, soup in a small cafe on Aurora. Mom said that the rain here was delicious. It didn't smell like a puddle, but like a tree. In the evening at our house, she stroked Taco. He had already returned to his lectures in the refrigerator, and asked, "You're not alone?" I said, "No, I am not alone." She nodded the way you nod when you remember that you can ask a question in different ways. In November, Ava, a neighbor from the first one, asked for a drill. Hang the shelf, otherwise the candles are stupidly standing on the floor. I brought the kit and screwed on the bracket at the same time because her level wasn't apping her phone, and it gave us all way. We talked about work. She's at an independent bookstore in Fremont, and I'm talking about boring but calm stability. They didn't promise anything, but they agreed on if anything. Knock. A week later, she brought a book with a note about people who fix their house and themselves in parallel. I put it next to the door closer. Let them be friends. The city behaved as usual. A bridge was being repaired somewhere, and they were discussing why the link was running less frequently, and they wanted. I began to notice that I was standing at the bus stop more calmly, as if an internal scoreboard had appeared in my head. How many minutes would it all arrive in? And what could be done now? Most of the time, you just stand at the bakery window where the letters croissant are fogging up on the glass, and don't check anything. In December, the intercom went off again, but this time we already had a shared Google tab with the Who's Home windows, the wizard's contact, and the done column. Mark added a line. Do not leave codes for couriers. Bring parcels to the lobby. We bolted down a small delivery shelf, propped up a corner and hung a thank you sign. For some reason, she made the entrance quieter. In January, I was offered to lead an onboarding of new designers. No heroism, just to explain where to poke. I have drawn up a document what to know by Monday and a separate one. What I don't have to know. The guys later said that it was the second one that lifted half of the alarm. I smiled. It seems that the ability to finish on time has come in handy here. By spring, Ava and I began to cross paths more often, sometimes at the laundry, then at the mailboxes. She sometimes left a bun at the door in the morning, if you forget tomorrow morning, and I brought her filters for the air purifier, and the smoke signaled its existence again. There's no cinematic dynamics, just two people holding doors for each other when their hands are busy. We went to Kraken once, sat high up, where you can see how people react to fights more than to the puck. We agreed that next time it won't be on Friday, because we both swear to ourselves about Friday silence. Sometimes, of course, it covers. In the evening, I hear someone swearing at the open tab of Life somewhere upstairs, and the old radio turns on in my head. What if? Then I do my tea in a thermos, a short walk to the water on the internet, Slack turned off. In 20 minutes, the coastlines coincide, mine and the city's. We can go back. Recently, I saw Emma again in the parking lot of the PCC. She was standing in line at the coffee trailer, with a backpack, without fatigue in her shoulders. We smiled at each other, like neighbors from different cities. I waved my hand high. She replied, hey. Nothing else is needed. I returned to the car and caught myself thinking a simple thought. I don't have a request for the past. I have things to do in the present. At home, I checked the door closer as if the only difficult task of the day was to make the door close softly. Taco sat on the edge of the table, poked his nose into my mug and jumped down to the window. He is his own intelligence. I took the tape and marker out of the pantry, signed the filters properly, because last year I confused the sides and cursed. I now have 5 stickers on the refrigerator, not 3. Pour the monster. Tuesday. Comments. Never after midnight. Do not be a hero. Filters. Arrow to the fan. If in doubt, take a walk. Sometimes it seems to me that my main actions for the year are not interviews, releases, or big decisions. These are the door closer on the general entrance door, the filter box by the elevator, the onboarding note which you don't have to know, and the chat message I'm home at 12:30, you can enter this window. And also, the ability not to write how are you at night to people to whom I no longer have to prove anything. It's not visible on the to-do list, but the result is a house where doors don't slam, and where people politely nod and say, yes, I'm here too. On weekends, I usually go to the water, Bioer Bay or Golden Gardens if I'm lucky with parking. I take a coffee, sit on a concrete block, listen to how the barges move the water, and the wind moves my thoughts. I'm writing 3 short lines in my notes, not for social media, but so I don't forget. Doing less, but on time is also speed. If it is possible to fasten the shelf, fasten it. I'm here, and that's enough, as long as I'm doing what I can. Sometimes I want a bigger plot, and then it goes away. I already have enough of it. It's just not about climaxes. He's about how Ava and I choose a soft white light bulb, how Mr. Kin teaches me how to tie green onions into a bunch properly, how tacos sleep on cool tiles on smoky days instead of on a laptop, and I respect his choice. If this continuation requires a point, then let it be a working one, not an artistic one. I'll put the kettle on, check the filters, write to the chat who's home on Saturday, let's take the lamps to fix it, close the door, which now closes quietly, and go to sleep to the steady hum of duct tape boxes, fans, and someone's come on. I'll help you hold it. Tomorrow it will rain again as part of the interface. Again Link will say next stop. Again a life in which it is enough to do on the spot. And honestly, that's enough for me. In the spring, the city decided that dry is about 3 hours in a row without drizzle. It smelled of wet cedar and hot metal from the brakes of the buses. I found a new norm for myself. On weekdays, I walk to the office twice a week no feet, just to remember what people's backs look like without cameras. On Fridays, my half hour of silence with everything turned off. On Saturdays, a short lap to the water with a thermos. At home, we did what we had been asking for a long time. A neighbor's shelf. A rack was hung on the wall by the elevator, with signed boxes on it. Screwdrivers plus bits, level plus tape measure, electrical tape plus screeds, masking tape. On the side is a toque, return sheet with dates and a fagot, remind cell. No one reset it, but strangely it worked. After a week the level returned to its place. The roulette moved between the floors like a reasonable meridian. Mark added with a marker pen, "If you don't know why you need a hammer drill, you don't need it." And it took down half of the requests. Ava called for help setting up chairs in their bookstore, an evening of short readings without a microphone. I brought a sign from home saying "Sit closer." Not for photos, but for hearing, and taped it to the table with the kettle. Not many people came, and this was just the case when not many is fine. Someone read about moving, someone read about bathroom repairs, one guy read about fixing a toaster for grandma. I winked at Mr. Kim inwardly. Then we folded the chairs and argued about which light in the hall was not from the interrogations room. We decided that the soft white had finally won. We even have a light bulb called that. The city continued to teach me to remind me. Ballard locks. At the peak of salmon, Ava and I stood elbow to elbow, watched the fish rest against the water and into ourselves, and I wrote in my notes, "Patience is not a pause." Work. At solstice, for the first time in my life, I put on an overly bright shirt just in case, and suddenly I fit in well. In a crowd where everyone is weird, you're just a human being. Sometimes Seattle does a system check. I turned off the lights for 3 blocks at once in the most harmless rain. We turned on our touch light on the first floor, the one so as not to stumble, took out the lanterns from the neighbor shelf, put thermoses on the table in the hall. I always have boiling water. Ava has tea bags for donations. Someone wrote in the chat at home, "The router is dead, but people are working," and I caught myself smiling in the dark. 2 hours later, the buzzing started. The outdoor transformer exhaled. The lamps blinked. The door with the door closer closed softly, as we had taught it. I felt that strange pride in things that just work again. Work also decided to remind me that I'm alive. I was asked to conduct an entry week for 3 juniors. I've divided the board into 2 columns. What to know by Friday and what you don't have to know at all. The second one contains all hidden keyboard shortcuts, release history since 2016, names of all managers of related teams. The guys later said that they exhaled exactly where they were allowed to not know. I added the item asking out loud is not a weakness to the onboarding template. It's a small thing, but now I'm a fan of small things. We cross paths with Emma again, textbook, at the PCC coffee trailer. The queue, the steam, the dog, not her. Our greetings are one hey long. Everything is in place, and there is no stringiness under the ribs. I found myself automatically checking to see if I needed more filters at home, rather than what to say. A good replacement. In the summer, the heat hit, rare, with an orange sky after 4. The course heroism box has become the hero of the season again. Mark typed out the instructions into languages, English and Korean. Namar. Kim approved and added with a pen scotch, "Do not skimp." We took 1 box to the bookstore. Ava put it by the children's corner, and the parents stopped leaving after 10 minutes. The air was noticeably fresher. A small sign appeared on the door, "Thanks to be neighbors," and I felt a little awkward about right. Taco switched to ceramics and shade mode in the heat. He only squeaked when the ice cracked in the bowl. He has his own aesthetic aspirations. The doctor on the phone said, if he eats and drinks, just respect his August. I respected that. In the fall, Dawn and I started a warm affairs table, not charity or reports, but a list of 10 things that can be done on the spot. There were: lubricate the hinges of the trash can in the yard, sign the delivery box, take the batteries out of the hall for disposal, check the filters for those who do not know how these arrows work. At the bottom is an empty line on. Anyone who wanted a button accordion went to a nearby chat to swear on link. Anyone who wanted to benefit was ticked off. 2 weeks later, the list was updated by itself. Put Ziplocs at the washing machines. The author is a neighbor with eternal socks at a mat at the entrance. Added. Bought. Do not stumble. I suddenly realized that I have a normal appetite for life in such lists. Ava and I slowly moved on to non-literary plans, a joint cabinet table, or what to screw on, what to buy, what to throw away. I carried a drill, it's patience. There is now a small hook under the top shelf for her funny hat with a pom-pom. I once hung it up and the apartment became ours, not my plus. On Fridays, we left notes for each other. Monster water. Pick up a hold for Mr. Kim in the library. Friday's half hour is sacred. Suddenly, there was a feeling that we is not a conversation, but a schedule where people arrive on time. One day in November, an old what if hit me. The trigger was someone else's wedding in the feet. Stupid. From the category of and we go there too. I followed my path. Tea in a thermos, interbay, water, barges, nose. I came up with an exercise for myself. 3 realities right now. My hands are cold. The neighbor's dog on a leash is happy that he's not getting wet. I want to go home, where it's quiet. I returned. Wrote to the chat at home. Who's home tomorrow? I have an additional door closer. You can put it on your door. And while I was fixing it, everything dissipated. It got really cold in the winter. There is ice on the steps. Minibuses are suspended on the ascents. Our entrance has turned into a mini headquarters. Salt in a bucket, a shovel at the door, on a board. Who moves cars in a row? I found myself not swearing at the snow for the first time this winter, because there was something to meet it with. Ava put her funny cats on top of her shoes and giggled as the two of us carried a bag of salt up the stairs. Hot tea was served right in the lobby to everyone who made it. Then a new note appeared in the calendar. Salt. Top up in November. Life is sometimes just a timely salt. By spring, I was invited to the Seattle neighborhood greenways on Saturday to set up temporary constrictions on the street in front of the school. They brought orange cones, turtles, and slow kid signs. My other mom, man, I stood at the crossing and counted how many cars were actually slowing down. It turned out to be the majority, if they saw the look. The human is contagious, like yawning. On the way back, Ava and I argued about where the zebra was in our neighborhood. We made a request on the portal. A month later, the markup appeared there. Not because of us alone, of course, but I still walked around her in an unnecessary circle, like a child. Emma sent another short one. Moving over the Cascades, Spokane. Your frying pan is still in the dorm. I'll leave it on the free shelf, if anything. I reply. Leave it. And put an end to it. Literally. A dot. Number. No bridges. I didn't get pinched. Just a statement. Things and people can change addresses. Taco, meanwhile, has found a new place for philosophy, the top of the closet. In the evenings, he watches the sunset there through the gap between the blinds and puts up with the fact that people sometimes have guests. A neighbor's Labramute, a huge dog, comes to visit us, and Taco has established diplomatic relations with him. I am tall, you are distant, and it works better than most expert advice on the internet. At work, I had another quiet achievement. At the end of the sprint, we now have a thank you minute. Every time I thank someone for the unheroic, for a normal code review without destructive literature, for the comment we'll discuss it later, for the link it's already been done here. The team is quieting down for the good. We've developed a new ritual. It's also about closers, just for conversation. To be honest, sometimes I find myself wanting to rush somewhere, to the Cascades, to Port Townsend, to the ferry just like that. Ava and I still went to Bainbridge for a day, at the end of May. Pies from the bakery, a path along the water, the very sea smell that makes me want to rearrange the furniture and change the filters. On the ferry back, I wrote in my notes, no further than Saturday plans are my new kind of range. In the evening, at home, I checked the neighbor's shelf again. Who returned what? On the took return sheet, someone wrote in pencil, thank you for having this here. Subscribe to 3A. I do not know who it is, and that's fine. There are now 6 stickers on the fridge instead of 5. The new one is salt in November. The old ones work. Monstera, Tuesday. Comments, not after midnight. Do not be heroic. Filters, arrow to the fan. If in doubt, take a walk. I don't photograph them for social media. They are for me, for Ava, for that dull humming of the boxes in the night that says, we're holding it. If the sequels have intermediate points, mine is like this. Sketch out in the chat at home this Saturday. A little fix it in the hall. Bring the squeaky, we'll try, put tea on. Check the door closer. Tat the tacos at the cupboard. Wait until someone says thank you downstairs, and go to bed, in the usual drizzle, which in this city is like screen nose, without which the picture seems suspicious. Tomorrow, Link will say next stop. Again, someone will ask for a level, someone will return the roulette wheel, someone will put a dot instead of a colon. And that's enough for me. Summer ended the way it usually ends with us, without fanfare. I just came home one day, in a t-shirt, and realized that the warm air was no longer evening, but remnants. We were just preparing our little fix-it in the lobby. I printed out the bring the creaky stuff. We'll try. Ava brought a box with felt stickers under the legs of the chairs. or roller with Teflon tape, and 2 cans of WD-40. Mr. Kim arrived before everyone else, put his old grindstone on the table and wrote, with a marker pen, "Knives are free, but cookies are welcome." 3 neighbors came, then 2 more. Someone had a door closer installed. Someone had the hinges on the mailbox tightened. 1 woman had the lamp in the hallway repaired from the 4th, simply by inserting the right bulb. She thought for 2 months that the wiring. In the end, someone silently left a bunch of new screeds and a pack of good scotch on the neighbor's shelf. A line appeared on the tuck return sheet. "Thank you for having this here." 3A. I caught myself in the childish joy of these letters and did not even bother to find out who it was. My job gave me a new toe. I was invited to short lectures at the Ballard Tool Library to tell me how not to turn a set of tools into an altar. I made a presentation of 4 slides. What exactly is needed? What can be borrowed? What is repaired with tape and what is not? How not to be ashamed to ask. The most popular is the last slide. Then a guy came up and said, "For a year I was embarrassed to ask my neighbor for a drill, because it was awkward. I asked today. Drill is a class." I wrote to myself, awkwardness is cheaper than a new drill. Everything about the smoke in September was according to the textbook. The wind was wrong, the sky was wrong, the city smelled like a bonfire that no one had lit. Mark and I assembled another box in the evening according to the Corsi Rosenthal scheme, and we hung a note in the hall saying keep the door closed. Turn on the light. Ava brought a box of N95 from the bookstore, which was delivered to them for the staff. Mr. Kim put the kettle at the outlet and the signed T for a donation in the sense of smile. The first thing I noticed was that people were talking quieter. When the air is heavier, silence is a courtesy. On Saturdays, we went to the water anyway. Once we rushed to Washin for an early ferry. We were stuck at the marina for an hour. Something was wrong with the schedule, and for the first time in a long time, this was not a negative thing for me. We sat on a warm board, watched someone play foundling with a cap. Ava took a book out of her backpack and read aloud the pieces that sounded like normal life. Don't drop a can of paint, and if you drop it, don't explain. Just wipe it off. They bought funny pear-shaped tomatoes on the island, and for the first time, I realized why people needed a place for marinade in the pantry. Emma wrote back from Spoken briefly. The frying pan moved to the free shelf. The neighbor took it away. Not an evil look. Everything is fair. I replied, okay, and caught the amazing thing. No shadow. If once it seemed to me that the world was divided into from my side, and not mine, now the world was divided into it works and it needs to be adjusted. The frying pan apparently got a new kitchen. I have a new spice shelf. Ava and I finally rolled it up to eye level so that turmeric would no longer live behind the pasta. The house gradually learned to be a home. Mark came up with micro alerts for the chat. Not who's making noise, but today at 7:30 p.m. I'm greasing the hinges at the back entrance. I'll take the passage for 10 minutes. Surprisingly, it became easier for everyone. When you know what's going to happen in half an hour, you stop trying to figure out why the world is against you. I also put the filter schedule there. Arrow to the fan. Dates. Tights. 2 apartments out of 5 really turned the filters over correctly. At least the others found out what an arrow is. I was still onboarding for June, and one day one of them, a guy with an impossible hoodie and a perfect commit message, asked, "How do you distinguish I'm tired from I'm burned out?" I said honestly, rest helps, tired. If it doesn't help, sit down and write a list of 3 things that you can give away. If it's easier after that, it's not burned out. If not, go speak out loud. He nodded, returned a week later and showed his list. Debag without me, stand up and turn, chat after 8, in airplane mode. It's working fine. Ava and I started planning beyond Saturday, but in our style, not forever. But the next quarter, we sat down and drew a pencil on a piece of paper. In November, salt. In December, lamps by the stairs. In January, a rug by the back door. And in small letters, February, go out of town for a day. It turned out to be a plan where everything is to the point and without heroism. I hung it in the hallway, next to our keys, and for the first time in a long time, I wanted to keep the life diagram in my head. One evening was one of those that you remember later for some reason. I came back late, soaked from the diagonal rain, and the lobby was quiet, except for the box whispering at low revs. On the neighbor's shelf there is a piece of paper folded in half. Thank you for not being heroic. I didn't change the cartridge last night. In the morning, everything came out according to the mind. 2D. I took this sheet, put it back, as in a museum, and went to my room. There Ava left me a mug by the stove and a note warm it up for 2 minutes, no more. Then the taste spoils. I shaved in the morning, and for the first time in a week I wasn't even late for Link. In winter, we were still trapped by snow. This time we not only laid out the salt, but also agreed with the library around the corner. For 2 days we made a warm room out of the children's room for those who walk from the bus stop and do not feel their fingers. I brought an extension cord, Ava thermos flasks, and librarian Diane printed out the sign sit, charge, breathe. A couple of people just sat there and left. One grandfather took out a lost battery from his hearing aid. I opened the recycling box and remember how long it had been since we had taken it out. We also have new rituals with tacos. He mastered the top of the closet and loved watching the Link circle our block in the distance in the evenings, where the light is streaked. If there are guests, he pretends that the cat is an abstract concept, but sometimes he gives up and allows himself to be stroked exactly twice. The third is superfluous. The neighbor's Labramute began to come in more regularly. His owner, James from 3A, probably the same one, somehow brought rubber pads on the legs for chairs in the hall, so that they wouldn't creak. I showed him our tuck return sheet, and he said, "It's warm here." That was the best review. By spring, I suddenly realized that I was no longer afraid of big words. Not because he matured, but because he understood their purpose. Trust is when you can leave your level on the neighbor's shelf and note that you will be returned. Caring is to buy salt on time in November, and not to be heroic with a shovel in January. We is not a correspondence, but who will take the hold to Mr. Kim. One evening Ava and I finally sat down to have an adult conversation, without loud orchestras. She said, "It's easy for me to live with you. Not fun, but easy. It's rare." I replied that I was comfortable with her, not poor, but safe. We didn't take out any boxes, we didn't say vows, we opened Google Calendar and added a common house, filters, lamps, salt, half an hour of silence, fix it once a month. Then I took the keys to the utility room, where we keep our plumbing supplies, out of the drawer and hung them on a common hook. She nodded. "It's working." In mid-April, a summons came from Neighborhood Greenways. They want to hang a small sign next to the school with the text "Go over. We'll wait." They asked if I would write more precisely. I wrote, "We see you. Go through quietly." A month later, the sign was up, and for the first time in my life, I caught a moment of pride without shame. This is not my sign. It's about people having 5 seconds where they don't have to run. And yes, about running. I still sometimes want to dump on the ferry just like that. Ava and I bought a timetable booklet in advance and put it in our backpack. Plans beyond Saturday are still rare, but when they happen, they fall exactly. Call mom on Tuesday, go to Bainbridge in May, buy salt in November, change filters in January, hang the door with a door closer someday, and do not forget to pat Taco behind the ear so that he does not forget that he's a domestic philosopher. If I had been asked to summarize this piece, I would not have been able to, but you could tell what it sounds like. The steady hum of the boxes at night, the soft click of the door closer, Ava's whisper of tea on the table, a cautious meow from the top of the cabinet, and a voice in the Link next stop. And you know that this is your stop. I go out, check the door, that the door closer, still well behaved, put a new marker on the neighbor's shelf and think, tomorrow someone will take it, write thank you, and that will be enough again. The finale, as usual, crept up from me every day. In March, the manager sent a letter. There will be a house meeting. The summons, nose, salt, a strange shelf by the elevator. We set up chairs in the hall, dragged our box closer to the outlet. Mr. Kim brought tea. Mark brought printouts. Almost everyone came, even the woman from the 4th, who used to write only to the chat with a caps lock. I briefly showed the neighbor's shelf, markers, Teflon tape, felt circles, a note took, returned, a list of contacts to whom to knock if it creaks. He said that it saves nerves and doors, and also makes us familiar not only by sounds. Ava added, and it's safe we don't get into each other's apartments. Everything is in plain sight. At the word safe, the woman on the 4th floor suddenly nodded, and then suggested, let's not have a strange shelf, but a mutual aid table. It's more decent this way. We voted, and for the first time in a year, I heard applause not on my phone, but in my hallway. They also approved our winter protocol. Salt in November, filters on schedule, a lamp on a sensor at the library, doors with closers, and a warm room in the children's room in severe frost. The manager sighed and asked who would do all this. We raised our hands. She looked at us as if we were a miracle from the tax office and said, "Then I'll print the plates." A week later, the signs were already hanging. Salt is here. Filter. Arrow to the fan. Sit. Charge it up. Breathe. I found myself ridiculously proud of the verbs. At the end of the month, Ava and I went to renew the contract, now for 2, without a ring or balls, with a ballpoint pen and 2 signatures. They celebrated not with champagne, but with a huge sandwich for 2 from the car wash around the corner and a new door closer to the back entrance. I turned it down, set the speed, and the door began to close the way I always wanted it to without slamming, as if the house was learning to speak more softly. We also finally finished off the corner of light by the stairs. We bought a soft white, hung up a dimmer, and it turned out that the evening light also has a voice, about the same as Ava says. Tea is already poured. Tacos now tolerate treats longer than 2 strokes, and James from 3A brought rubber pads to the legs of the remaining chairs just so that it would be like people. Work has also become smooth. Junies are growing up. There are fewer breaks in the evenings. More. Here's a link to the doc. There's a case. At the last onboarding, a guy in a t-shirt with a ridiculous slogan asked, "And how do you know that something has worked in your life?" I said, "It stops making noise and starts being the background." He nodded, and the following week brought me a list of his noses that he turned off notifications after 8. Yes to everything in a row, the feeling that he urgently needed a punch. We laughed the loudest with the punch. In the spring, we waited for a response from neighborhood greenways. Our phrase was hung outside the school. "We see you. Go through quietly." I went there on purpose in the evening. 2 children, holding hands, crossed the road. Mom smiled for half a second. The guard at the entrance waved his hand at me. It was the most unrealistic and correct scene in many years. Sometimes a city brings back the past not as a drama, but as news. In mid-April, Emma sent one message. "I saw your sign at the school. It's a good one." I reply, "Thank you." And to everything, there was no emptiness. It's just that 2 adults have noted that there is one more quiet thing in the world. By May, we had posted a thin folder on the mutual aid table. Instructions at home. On the first page there is a map of sockets. On the second, a calendar of salts and filters. On the third, the phones of those who come to the house without pathos and on time. A locksmith, an electrician, a librarian, Diane. The last one has an empty page with the heading "What to add." It was filled the fastest. There appeared in handwriting, "Where can I get baby earplugs? Is it possible to steal the box at night to my place? Who knows how to wash the marker from the door if the neighbor's artist?" We wrote down the answers with a simple pencil, sometimes with the phrase "Ask Kim," and for some reason it worked better than any chat. In the summer, they arranged another fix-it. Now not bring the creaky stuff, but bring the extra stuff. Everyone's got it. Screws of the wrong step, single hooks, light bulbs of the wrong base. We put everything in jars and signed it big. Mark nailed a rack with hooks over the table. They hung a common hammer there. A pale yellow sign was hung nearby. "Do not be a hero. Ask for help." The most photographed thing of the evening. Ava, meanwhile, has taken on a new schedule at work, a human one, without night shifts. The first night, when she didn't come after dawn, we just sat on the steps at the entrance with 2 bowls of soup. We sat for a long time, not talking about the case. She rested her head on my shoulder and said, "I like that we have plans beyond Saturday now, even if it's salt in November." I reply, "And that we is not a chat, but a list of who helped." At that moment, Taco looked down from the top step with a look of "Don't make any noise, I have a shift here." The city reacted to this its own way, by raining half an hour earlier than the forecast and announcing in a link that matched the tone of my thoughts, "Next stop." And I realized that this was really my stop, not a metaphorical one, but a residential one. I do not know how to finish a textbook story. Mine ends in the evening when I go around the house. I check that the door closer at the back entrance closes softly, that there is a marker on the mutual aid table, that the filter at the box is not forgotten, that the lamp at the stairs catches movement so as not to dazzle. I stop at Mr. Kim's door, and I can hear him sharpening his knives abruptly and smoothly, just like we live now. I get up. Our keys are on the hook in the hallway, next to the list for the next block, a lamp on the playground, salt in November, warm in the cold, make tea, fix the squeak at the door. Ava left a mug in the kitchen and a note saying warm it up for 2 minutes. I smile, turn on the kettle, and hear a soft sh from the filter. And that sound doesn't bother me anymore. It's like the background of a movie where you can finally turn off the subtitles. Everything is clear. If you need a dot, it's probably like this. I paste a narrow strip of paper onto the last empty page of our folder and write in large letters. It works. Then I put the marker back on the table, turn off the hall light, dimmer by half a notch, and listen to the door close behind me without a bang. This soft click has everything I wanted: a house, people, plans for Saturday, a cat on the closet, and me, who finally has enough. No more, no less. I'm here. That's enough. Tomorrow, according to the plan,